In the case of Canada, we're spending $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Canada only works as a state. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually.
Seems to threaten to turn Canada into America's 51st state. Carney not taking this, as was evident in his speech last night.
We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
The trade war with Canada is escalating. Canada is not taking it lightly. Retaliatory tariffs are already in place, and the fallout could spiral into a full-blown recession. Prices are climbing, businesses are panicking, and the relationship between Canada and the US is going downhill fast. So, how bad is it going to get? And who stands to lose the most? Stick around, because in this video, we are going to cover some key developments. How Trump's tariffs are already hurting Canadian businesses and consumers. How Mark Carney is striking back with retaliatory tariffs. Why Trump is targeting Canada. And what his endgame is. What happens next? This is a fight that could reshape Canada's economy for decades. What it means for you. It is already happening. Canadian businesses are feeling the squeeze. Lumber and steel exports to the US have dropped by 15% already in just 2 weeks. Factories are slowing down. Workers are being laid off. And small businesses that rely on American supplies are scrambling to find alternatives. It's not just businesses. Everyday Canadians are paying the price too. Grocery bills are climbing. Imported products like electronics and cars are noticeably more expensive already. And gas prices? Analysts are already predicting a 12% spike due to supply chain disruptions. And here's the thing. American businesses are starting to hurt too. Canadian companies have pulled over $3.4 billion in contracts from US suppliers. American farmers who rely on Canadian markets are watching demand dry up almost overnight. US exports to Canada have already dropped by 7%. And this is just the beginning. The stock market is not handling it well either. The Toronto Stock Exchange has taken a 4.2% hit since the tariffs were announced. And some analysts are warning that it could get much worse if this continues. Investors are getting nervous. And when investors get nervous, it's never good news for the economy. Canada's retaliation. Canada is not just sitting back and taking the hit. Mark Carney, our new Prime Minister, has made it clear, once again, this is not going unanswered. Canada has slapped a 25% retaliatory tariff on key American exports. Steel, aluminum, and agricultural products are all in the crosshairs. And that's just phase one. Canada is already planning a second wave of tariffs targeting American cars, pharmaceuticals, and electronics. Major Canadian retailers like Loblaws and Canadian Tire are talking about pulling American products from their shelves. Canadian companies are adjusting fast. Lumber producers are working on shifting sales to Europe and Asia. Dairy farmers are cutting new deals with Mexico and South America. Even manufacturers are working to reduce dependence on American material by sourcing locally. And Trump's response? He is threatening to double the tariff if Canada does not back down. This is turning into a high-stakes game of economic chicken. And neither side looks ready to blink. What is Trump's strategy here? So, why is Trump doing this? It's not just about trade, it's political. First, there's the trade deficit. The US has a $53.5 billion trade deficit with Canada. Trump's plan is simple. Make it more expensive for Americans to buy Canadian goods and force Canada to buy more American products in return. Second, this is red meat for Trump's political base. His supporters love the America First strategy. And taking a hard line with Canada makes Trump look like he is defending American jobs. But there is also a strategic angle. Canada supplies over 30% of America's steel and aluminum. If Trump squeezes Canada hard enough, he's betting that the Canadian government will give in and renegotiate trade terms in America's favor. But here is the problem. Canada is not playing along. And that's where things get messy. Canada's economy at risk. Canada's economy is deeply tied to the US, and that's where the real risk lies. Over 75% of Canadian exports go to the US. If this trade war keeps escalating, Canada's GDP could shrink by up to 1.5% this year alone. And if Trump targets Canadian auto exports next, that could be catastrophic. Canadian auto exports to the US could drop by 40%. Ontario, which is heavily reliant on auto manufacturing, could see over 100,000 jobs disappear almost instantly. It's not just manufacturing. Farmers are already feeling the pressure. Export-heavy industries like mining and energy are also bracing for major disruptions. If supply chains start breaking down, the consequences will be felt across the board. But Canada is not backing down. Trade officials are already in talks with European Union and Asian market to shift Canadian exports away from the US. Domestic manufacturing is getting a boost from government subsidies and emergency loans. And there is even talks of setting up a new trade corridor with Mexico and South America. It's a bold strategy, but it's also very risky because if Trump follows through on his threats to escalate tariffs, Canada's economy could be looking at a long and painful recovery. Who really loses? Let's be clear, no one wins a trade war. For Canada, the stakes are enormous. If the tariffs hold, Canada's total exports could drop by over $45 billion this year. Canadian businesses that rely on American imports will have to pass those costs on to consumers, which means higher prices for everything, from groceries to cars to construction materials. For the US, the damage is not much better. Canada is America's largest trading partner, with over $427.7 billion in goods and services flowing across the border each year. If Canadian businesses stop buying American products, the US could lose over $20 billion in revenue by the end of 2025. American farmers are already pressuring Trump to back down. The auto industry, which relies heavily on Canadian parts, is warning that production costs are going to skyrocket. And if American companies start losing market share to European and Asian competitors, this could trigger a broader economic slowdown. So, who blinks first? That's the big question. Mark Carney has made it clear Canada is not going to fold. Trump's team, meanwhile, is doubling down. And some insiders are saying Trump is prepared to hit Canadian auto exports next. But behind the scenes, there are whispers of a background negotiation. Both sides know that if this escalates further, the damage could be irreversible. Canada and the US have weathered trade disputes before, but this time feels different. The stakes are higher, the rhetoric is sharper, and the political pressure is mounting. If Canada stands its ground, it could force Trump to back down. But if Trump follows through on his threats, Canada's economy could face its biggest crisis in decades. So, who's going to blink first? Canada or Trump? Do you think Carney should keep fighting, or should Canada look for a compromise? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe for more updates on Canadian current affairs, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. This fight is not over, and you'll want to be here when the next round begins. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.